Welcome to 5 Steps to Double Your Case Acceptance Without Being Pushy. My name is Jeff Palmer. I am the founder of Case Acceptance Academy, and I am excited to share with you today the 5 steps that I've put together to help you double your case acceptance without being pushy or sounding like a used car salesman. So let's get rolling. Who am I and why should you listen to me? In 1994, I started working with dentists for a national company that trained dentists, chiropractors, veterinarians, optometrists on how to get new patients and how to organize their practice like a business. And I spent 15 years working with dentists and other healthcare practitioners, but I talk with no less than 10,000 doctors on the phone and in person, helping them to improve their practice. After 15 years of doing that, I decided I wanted to transition from that company and go out on my own, and I went into partnership with my father-in-law in a dental practice in western Pennsylvania. Now, I moved from Clearwater, Florida to western Pennsylvania in February of 2009, and that was the beginning of the worst economy of our lifetime. Here you can see the stock market graph, and there's March of 2009, and March 1st is when I walked into that practice. The practice was fee-for-service. It was located in a rural town of 3,600 people. So 3 operatories, 3,600 people, fee-for-service practice. And the challenge, aside from the obvious, was that in 2008, the end of 2008, CareCredit had stopped approving all patients for financing because they could not figure out the computations for unemployment, so they just stopped approving everyone. The previous year's income of $750,000, over half of that came from CareCredit financing, and that had pretty much dried up. I had never worked in a dental practice before. I had only told doctors what to do, and the reason why I took on this challenge is because I wanted to prove to myself that not only could I do what I was telling other doctors to do, but I also wanted to develop a system that was easy and predictable to teach other doctors how to get high case acceptance. So what happened? So in March 1st, when I walked in, I focused on 2 things that I'm going to go over with you shortly. And those 2 things ultimately transition the practice to creating the highest ever income within 90 days in that practice. So in the beginning of the worst economy of our lifetime, in a rural practice, town of 3,600, no insurance participation, we created the highest ever income in the beginning of the worst economy of our lifetime. And the practice did close to $1 million a year for the next 5 years until we sold it and then moved to Northern Virginia, which is where I'm talking to you from now, Sterling, Virginia. We moved here, and totally different situation. There is 47 dentists within 1 mile, and we've built another $1 million practice using these same systems, which I'm going to share with you in the next few minutes here. The 5 steps that can help you to achieve your collection goal through high case acceptance. The system still works now, as you can see here with another doctor that I've been helping with these 5 steps. His front desk staff is trained, and he can handle existing and new patients, and they get them to arrive in the office. And he now has the certainty to get his patients to accept treatment. So as you can see here, this is where we started, quarterly collections, and now they're up here. So a 22% increase in collections is not too shabby. What's my motivation for doing this? Well, I grew up working in a small business. My father owned a small business, and eventually that business went bankrupt due to economic changes that continued to occur. You know, in retail right now, we deal with the Amazon effect, and in dentistry right now, we're dealing with the corporate effect. Corporate dentistry has created increased competition. They've decreased cost, which is in turns makes it more challenging because they are decreasing cost and they're driving down price through increased competition. And this is a natural occurrence which happens in many different marketplaces, and it's happening right now in dentistry, which makes it more challenging for the solo dentist to remain competitive and profitable. So my motivation is to help you achieve your collection goals by high case acceptance, and I'm going to go over with you now the 5 steps that you can do to make that happen. To lay out how important case acceptance is in your practice to achieve your collection goals, I'm going to share with you what I've created and I call a dental office sales conversion funnel. Now, my background is marketing and sales, and most dentists don't look at their business as a sales process or having a sales process. In reality, every business that is in existence has a sales process, whether you are conscious of it or not. And my goal is to make you conscious of your sales process, because when you're conscious of your sales process, then you can make changes to improve it over time, and it becomes very predictable. So this is what I call a dental office sales conversion funnel. So let me define a couple of terms here. Conversion means when you make a change. It's when you take an action. When you are in a restaurant, you want the people that walk in the door to be seated and to convert them into buying more items or getting more items on the menu. You want to convert them into buying more drinks, so they ask you about drinks in the beginning, and then you want to convert them into buying dessert at the end. And different restaurants have different processes that convert their customers or patrons into purchasing more menu items, ultimately resulting in more purchases, more beverages and food consumed per person that walks in. It works the same way in a dental office. Is when patients call your office, you want them to come in and you want them to buy the services that you have available that you're recommending that they need. I'm going to lay out for you exactly how this works in your office. You have new patients and existing patients that usually come in the office via the telephone. When a patient calls the office, the receptionist or whoever it is that's working at your front desk uses particular skills and tactics, hopefully that they're conscious of. Usually they're not. But whatever it is that they say or do on the phone will result in that person coming in for an appointment. The first point of conversion in the dental sales conversion funnel is when a new patient calls, how many of them arrive in the office. For example, if you have 10 new patients calling your office, how many arrive in the chair in your office? In my experience, most dentists know how many new patients are coming in the office for an appointment, but they don't know how many people are calling the office for an appointment. And if you don't know how many people are calling, there's no way to know the conversion. For example, if you had 10 people call and 5 people arrived, that would be a 50% conversion, and that's about what I see as average. with the tactics that we use with our clients and in our office now, we get 80 to 90% conversion. That means if 10 people call your office, 8 or 9 are going to arrive in the chair. And that is the first point of conversion on the new patient side, is getting patients to come in that actually call the office for an appointment. The next point of conversion is when the dentist does an exam. That exam results in treatment presented to the patient. And the dollar value that is presented to the patient is what is called dollar value of treatment presented. Every procedure has a dollar value, and we're talking about the dollar value that you can actually get paid on. If you participate with a PPO and you've got a $1,200 crown, the insurance is going to pay $900. The dollar value of treatment presented is $900. There'll be $450 from the patient, $450 from the insurance. $900 is the total amount of treatment presented. Now the point of conversion is, did the patient say yes? Did they pay? And did they get the work done? So if you're diagnosing $10,000 worth of work in a week and a patient says yes to half of that, that would be $5,000 in treatment accepted, or $10,000 presented, $5,000 accepted, a 50% conversion. Why am I spending so much time going over new patient calls to new patient seen, patient treatment presented to treatment accepted? Because the treatment accepted amount equals your collection volume. Now, the reality of the conversion on the treatment presented to accepted side is the average dentist is somewhere around 25 to 30% conversion, meaning that $10,000 is presented, they're going to collect $3,000. What I discovered back in 2009 in the practice in Western Pennsylvania, it was at a 30%, 33% to be exact, conversion rate on every dollar that was presented. It collected 33%. What we did with the tactics that I'm going to share with you today is we took that from 33% to 50%. And when we took that from 33% to 50%, that's when the collection volume took off. And this is the way that a sales conversion funnel works in a dental office. Is you have new patients coming in. When you present treatment to them, then you have money to collect. I was interviewed by a colleague of mine, Jerry Jones, founder of ClearPath Society. He has a dental practice in Salem, Oregon, and also a dental marketing company. And when he interviewed me, he asked me, what is it that you did that first 90 days in practice? And this is the quote that I took from that talk, which really kind of sums it up. He said, really what you did is you walked in the office and said, okay, there's two metrics I'm going to measure. One is how we're doing on the phones, and the other is how we're doing on closing treatment. If you're doing a bad job on the phones, you don't get to present treatment. If you're doing a bad job presenting treatment, you don't get to collect any money, right? So that's the essence of dental business right there. You can add in all sorts of other complicated things and analysis, but if these two things are off, your whole business is in the tank. So I really like how you've just kept it simple, and man, it's good stuff. This is the foundation of the 5 steps to double your case acceptance without being pushy. And I'm going to go over those 5 steps, and I'm going to go really deep into how you can start doing this right now after you watch this video. Now, change is what needs to happen when you're presenting treatment. And so the first thing that I want to go over with you is the same thing I share with every doctor when I'm training them, is that I've discovered what the biggest mistake dentists make when presenting treatment. And really no dentist is immune to this. And you can get away with it in dentistry because patients come in and they're in pain and their teeth are hurting and they have problems that they want to get fixed. But everything beyond what is immediately necessary is what patients will tell you. I need to think about it. I need to talk to my spouse. That's too much money. What does my insurance cover this year? How do you fix that? Well, the way that you fix it, stop presenting the treatment plan before the patient owns the consequences of your diagnosis here. And the consequences is really the key. If patients understand the consequences of not getting the diagnosis handled, they are more motivated to accept your treatment and pay for it and follow through. Now, this sounds like a very simple concept, and it is, but in reality it's very challenging because we all have a difficult time changing our habits. And dentists are very, very ingrained from dental school to learn how to find problems and then figure out and do the solution. You find the diagnosis and present the solution. And what this does when you find the problem and present the solution right away is it omits the patient from the process. You're actually taking the patient and forgetting about what's going on in their head and their heart, and then you present the solution and they give you what I call the bobblehead. They say, yes, doctor, yes, doctor, yes, doctor, and then they go up to the front, and then they don't schedule, they don't pay, or they schedule and they don't show up because they don't own the consequences of the diagnosis. Now, I am going to teach you as much as I can in the next few minutes here because I really want you to understand how you can double your case acceptance. So I'm going to dive deep into the most important step here, which is how you can get your patients to own the consequences of your diagnosis. How you can get your patients to own the consequences of your diagnosis, thus getting them to say yes more. The number one thing that you can do is talk to your patients about the consequences first, not their treatment. You're talking to your patients about the consequences of non-treatment, not their treatment. How do you do this? And this is where I have developed a very simple and hyper-effective 3-step process on how to get the patients to own the consequences of your diagnosis. Ready? The 3 steps I call show, tell, ask. And these 3 steps are one of the steps of the 5 in doubling your case acceptance. And it's the most important step. And that's why I'm sharing it with you now. And then I'm going to lay out the 5 steps. So how do you do this? The first thing you do is you show the patient the diagnosed condition using some type of objective diagnostic, X-ray, picture, or chart. And this is where having patient photos, intraoral, extraoral, are so critical. Having digital X-rays, bite wings, full mouth series, panoramic X-ray, these things are so critical. And having them ready and having them so that you can show them to the patient right after your exam is critical. Now, what most doctors do is they show, if they're even showing the patient the X-rays or the pictures, which a lot of them do, but a lot of them don't. You'd be surprised. And when I work with clients, how many doctors are not sharing with their patients the diagnosed conditions that they are finding on x-rays and in the pictures. They're just talking about them. Talking about them and showing them is two different things. Okay, so the first thing you do is you show. The next thing you do is you tell. Now, you don't tell the patient about the treatment based on the diagnosis in this step. You're telling the patient about the consequences of non-treatment. And what this means is that when you see a diagnosis, you start formulating in your mind in a nanosecond all of the things that are going to happen if you don't treat that tooth. And then you go right into, well, how am I going to do this? Is it going to be a filling or is it going to be a crown? Does it need to be a root canal or is it going to be an extraction? Is that going to be a bridge or is that going to be an implant? So automatically you see the diagnosis, and then you can see and picture in your mind in a nanosecond what's going to happen if they don't fix it. And then you start thinking about, well, this is what I'm going to recommend, your treatment plan. But what I'm going to have you do, and this is a very critical step, is you're not going to talk to the patient about the treatment. You're just going to talk to them about the consequences of non-treatment. Now, when you're talking about the consequences of non-treatment, if the patient isn't saying immediately, well, I see what you're saying, doctor, and I want to know what I can do to fix it. If they are not in that frame of mind where they're saying, okay, doc, what do I do to fix it? You're going to ask them a question. And you're going to say a question such as, does that bother you? How do you feel about it? What do you think is going to happen if that doesn't get treated? So the three steps are show the patient the picture or the x-ray, then tell them about the consequences of non-treatment, and then if they aren't ready in saying, hey, what do I do to get this fixed, then you're going to ask them a question so that they're fully engaged and you're both seeing the same thing as far as the diagnosis and the consequences, and they are then what I call in the case acceptance sweet spot. They are ready to hear your treatment and they are motivated to take action. Let me give you an example of how this works. So the thing that you're going to do is you're going to talk about the consequences first, not their diagnosis, not their treatment. You're going to talk about their consequences first, not their treatment. Okay? Here we have a previously root canaled tooth that has a abscess right here. Now this is a situation where the patient's not feeling any pain. This is chronic, not acute. This could be any chronic abscess, and one of the most challenging diagnoses to get a patient to own is a chronically abscessed tooth. Why? Because the consequences are not obvious to the patient. What is the most obvious consequence of a dental condition? Pain. If the patient is experiencing pain, it's easy. But many, many dental conditions, many physical health conditions, you do not experience pain until it's too late. The number one thing that you're going to run into as an objection is it's not hurting me, so I'm going to wait. Now, they may not even be saying it's not hurting me, but when they say I need to think about it, I need to talk to my spouse, it's too expensive, that means it's not hurting me physically, it's not bothering me emotionally, so I'm not doing anything about it. In this situation, if we're talking about the consequences, we'd show the person the x-ray and we'd say, you see this here, this dark spot is an infection. This tooth has pus that's building up here and it's eating away at the gum and bone. And the tooth has been treated before, but when did you get this tooth treated? And they're going to probably say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever it is. Well, it's lasted a good long time, but the infection has crept back in here, and it's eating away at the gum and bone. And while you're saying that, the person is kind of like maybe looking at the x-ray and giving you a blank stare. And they're going to be giving you a blank stare, and you'd say, so what do you think about having an active infection there in your tooth? And they're like, well, I don't like it. And once they say they don't like it, or they want to do something about it, now you're actually engaging them in the diagnosis. Now let's just say that you say, well, you have an active infection in your tooth, and you say, so what do you think about that? And they say, well, I really don't care. Now we have a much different scenario going on where the patient actually doesn't care what's going on. And a lot of times it's not that the patient doesn't care, it just means that they have bigger problems going on in their life than a tooth that is not hurting them right now, because they know that it's going to cost money, they know it's going to take time, and they don't even want to think about it because it's not hurting them right now and they got other things going on in their life. But if you can get the patient to say to you in their own words, I don't like it, I want to fix this, now they'll be willing to listen to the treatment. And the treatments here could be a few different things. It could be a retreat of the root canal, it could be an extraction, and then after the extraction there's going to be a bridge, or there's going to be an implant, or there's going to be a partial. So there's a few different things going on here, and there's a few different ways that it can be treated, but unless the patient owns the diagnosis and the consequence of not getting it fixed, they're not going to move forward in taking any action. So the most important thing is to talk about the consequences first, not their treatment. One of the biggest challenges that dentists run into when doing this process is taking the time and asking questions. Because usually what happens is the dentist is in the frame of mind of doing a surgery or doing a root canal, and then they come in to do an exam, and they look at the x-ray and they tell, rather than show, tell, ask. So they're telling the patient the problem rather than asking and engaging and getting them to own the problem. This changes everything. This gets the patient telling you in their own words why they want to fix it, and they desire to get the treatment done, and so you no longer have to chase patients. Patients desire to get it done, and they're much more willing to commit financially and get the work done because they own the diagnosis. It's not just you telling them what they need. I have a saying, it goes, telling is not selling. But when you show, tell, ask, and get them to tell you in their own words why they want to get it done, there's nothing more powerful. Now, this is just one step in the overall 5 steps. So let me get into sharing with you now the 5 steps to double your case acceptance. Case acceptance is actually a process, and there's a system to it. And it can be organized to make it as predictable as setting up and doing a root canal, setting up and doing a crown prep, setting up and doing a filling. Everything that you do in your office has a predictable system, and it's getting your staff to be able to prepare the operatory, to prepare the environment so that you have what you need to be able to perform the procedure correctly. Clinically, you have procedures, and what I've set up here is another procedure, a system that makes high case acceptance very predictable. So we're going to go through this in reverse because I've reverse engineered it. So number 5 is you're in the driver's seat, and if you focus on these stats that I went over with you to control and predict your production and collections, that is, know how many new patients called, not just how many you've seen, and then look at how many you've seen in relation to how many have called, and that will tell you, are you effective on the phones? Number 2 is knowing how much you've presented in treatment and how much has been accepted. And the definition of accepted that I use is the patient says yes and is committed financially. They've committed financially to that procedure. So if you present a crown and they said yes and they signed the treatment plan and they've paid a portion or all of their out-of-pocket and then they've scheduled, then that is accepted. It's not accepted until they say yes and they've signed the treatment plan and they've paid and they've gotten it done. Many people are having patients get on the schedule and not collecting any out-of-pocket portion, and they pay either when they show up or after the procedure is done, and that wreaks havoc on the schedule. but that's because they don't know how to do number 5, which is comfortably present the fees and smoothly gain a financial commitment. And that's much, much easier to present the fees and smoothly get a financial commitment when you've done step number 3, which is what I just went over with you in detail, is how to have an emotionally engaging case presentation. Because when you've had an emotionally engaging case presentation and the patient has told you in their own words that they don't want that problem, they want to get it fixed, presenting the fees and smoothly gaining a financial commitment is much, much easier. And what I teach my clients how to do, and we do in our office, is patients pay either half or all of their out-of-pocket when they're reserving that time in the doctor's schedule or in the hygienist's schedule, and then they get the procedure done, and then if they have insurance, we're going to bill the insurance for the balance. The ideal scenario for most doctors is that the people have a financial commitment, and if you want to have that and you don't have it, it's because there's no emotional engagement from the patient. They haven't decided they want to get it done, because then when you go to present the fee, they give you all kinds of objections. And when they have chronic abscesses that they say yes to in the office, but they don't commit financially, and you block out an hour and a half to 2 hours in the schedule for the root canal, and then that morning they don't show up or call the night before and don't confirm or say they have to work or they have to go take their cat to the vet or whatever else it is, it's because they weren't emotionally committed to the treatment, and so they don't show up. So step 5 is knowing the stats. Step 4 is presenting the fees and getting a financial commitment, which comes after step 3, which is the doctor having an emotionally engaging case presentation by presenting the problems first and not the treatment. Now step 2 is a real game changer. Step 2 is what I call the pre-consultation interview. And this is an interview that is done by the treatment coordinator, and it takes about 2 minutes. And every new patient gets one of these interviews. And what it does is it gets what's going on in the patient's head, what are they thinking, and in their heart, what are they feeling, before the dentist does the exam. And when the dentist knows what's going on in the patient's head and in their heart, in addition to their x-rays and their medical history, they can do a more personalized exam, and they can do a more personalized case presentation, because they're not just talking about treatment, they're talking to the person. And when you can customize your exam and case presentation based on what's going on in the head and the heart of the patient, your case acceptance will be much higher, your referrals will be much higher, because you're actually creating a personalized experience for that patient. And that's step number 2, the pre-consultation interview. It's the secret to eliminating barriers to high case acceptance. And if you want to see that pre-consult interview, I'm going to give you my contact information at the end, and I will share with you the pre-consult interview so that you can start doing it on your patients if you like. But this is done by the treatment coordinator before the exam, and it does 2 things. It builds rapport, number 1, and number 2, when you have a big case that you're presenting in number 4 here, and the treatment coordinator is meeting the patient for the first time and talking money, the treatment coordinator is at a huge disadvantage if they've never met that patient or have no idea what's going on with them. And when you have the treatment coordinator doing step 2 in the beginning, man, the case acceptance just gets so much better and easier at the end, and your collections and production just begin to rise. Step 1 is new patient scheduling tactics that convert 9 out of 10 calls into a patient in the chair. Patients are becoming more and more conscious of finding a dentist that takes their insurance, finding a dentist that has the right hours, and they call the office and they say, do you take my insurance? Do you participate with this? How much does this crown cost? Do you have evening hours? Do you have Saturday hours? Now, I'm not suggesting that you participate or don't participate or change your hours or reveal your fees. What I am suggesting is that if your front desk knows how to handle these questions, they can convert 9 out of 10 people to showing up in your office, because they're not calling your office to find out how much a crown is, if you participate with Delta, or if you have Saturday hours. They're calling your office because they have a dental need, they have a problem that they want to get fixed. And when you can take those questions and uncover the need and get them scheduled correctly, then your new patient conversions go through the roof. And I would be more than happy to share with you the script that I use to train people, because if you know how to do this, then you have more people to present treatment to, and you have more people saying yes, and your numbers will go up. Because if they don't go to you, they're going down the street. They are going to get that dental problem fixed. And there is a science and an art to being able to handle a patient on the phone. And just to remind you, I worked on the phone for 15 years and talked with 10,000 doctors, and there's nothing that I think is more challenging than selling a dentist over the phone. So I have a little bit of experience in working with selling over the phone, and I've taken all of the information that's out there, the good, and filtered through all the bad, and I've just got the pearls here that we laser focus in on making people hyper effective on answering the phone. Because if you don't have people answering the phone properly, you don't have people to sell. So these are the 5 steps that when you implement them, you will double your case acceptance, and you won't even have to be pushy, because you're presenting things in a way that patients want to get the treatment done, and there's no need to be pushy because you're making the diagnosis. The reason why you have to be pushy is because they don't own it. So the question I want to ask you is, are you ready to make a change? You have many bad habits that weaken you. The secret of change is to focus all your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. Times are changing right now in dentistry, and you cannot fight corporate dentistry because it is happening. So don't focus on that fight. Focus on changing the habits that weaken you. And the habits that weaken you have to do with the way that you're presenting patients treatment. Because if your case acceptance isn't where you want to be, it's because you're presenting treatment in a way that's not working. It has nothing to do with the economy. It has nothing to do with corporate dentistry. It has probably nothing to do with your location, because we have 47 dentists within a square mile, and we have 9 right out our window. So I would invite you to focus on changing your habits and changing your operating basis so that you can present things in such a way that increases the desire within your patients to say yes. A lot of times what I'm getting into with clients is that they have a lot of reasons or excuses as to why they can't grow their practice, why they can't achieve their collection goals, why won't their staff listen to them. And the only mindset that leads to growth is that you can have your excuses or you can have success. You can't have both. And whatever degree of success you have, you've had because you had to rise above a situation that was challenging or non-optimum, and you met that challenge. Whether it was getting through dental school or opening your practice or, doing surgeries or placing those implants or whatever it is. And you can have success, you can have excuses, you cannot have both. So what do you do now? What's your next best move? Well, if I've talked to you in a way that resonates with you, and you are an ambitious dentist that wants to achieve their collection goals, then I invite you to go to my website, caseacceptanceacademy.com/strategy, and let's figure out together what your next best move is. What is your next best move? Go to caseacceptanceacademy.com for a free strategy session. We'll set up a time to talk and we'll figure out what it is that you need to do to achieve your collection goals.